with you has been foiled by 5 extra Zoom meetings that snuck in.
They have a way of doing that, don't they?
We don't have travel time to blame anymore. That's the problem. I need to create some. So we're right at, we're right at 4:30. We'll call the budget meeting of March 31st to order. Let me see here. Budget articles 4, 5, and 15. And Reagan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. So to get started, budget committee members, I did send you a PDF of the prior meeting minutes. So if you'd like to look at those, you can make a decision for approval.
Let me get those up here. So do we have a motion to approve the budget committee minutes?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
All right. And seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Motion carries.
Okay, as Rob pointed out today, we will be moving through 3 articles, 4, 5, and 15. So I'll just introduce the topics for each of those articles so everyone is clear. Article 4 is other instruction, which includes our co-curricular and our athletic costs in the school district. Article 5 is student and staff support, and it is an all-inclusive article with areas for guidance, nursing services, technology, 504, student intervention services, curriculum, assessment, library, and professional development. So quite a comprehensive article today for you to consider. And then we'll move into adult education, which is Article 15. And we will talk today about the budget and programming for adult education that has grown and been so successful in RHU 22 as a partnership with both Orono and Old Town. And so we refer to it as the Riverside Adult Education. So if there aren't any questions about the content we'll cover today, we'll dive right in.
Great.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up some documents. So one moment, please.
And these are attached to the meeting invite as well, correct, Reagan, for those that responded? Yeah.
Yes, they are.
I'm trying to sort them on my other screen here, and they've blown up on me. So maybe I'll just look at what you have on your screen.
Okay.
4. Great.
Take me just 1 minute to get these all pulled up for you.
Are you doing the full summary or the revision page first?
I'm going to do the cover sheet first.
Okay.
And I'm sure that everyone needs that to be enlarged.
Yes.
But I'm not on there.
How's
The
that?
color is helpful, though. The color is very helpful.
All right. So Article 4, other instruction, are the costs of co-curricular and athletics at all of our schools. And as you can see, we are coming today with a proposed budget of $1,009,749.64, which is an increase of $1,977.56 for a 0.2% increase. What you'll see on the cover sheet is that we have the subtopics within this article, and that we are seeing reductions in a few of the categories or stable funding. And I'd like to go into more depth when we get to the next page. But as usual, when you see the reductions in amounts like $622, that's generally indicative of there being some level of benefits change or rate of pay change because new people have come on board. And you know, with coaches, we have new coaches coming along or advisors in certain activities that may not be a senior, and so therefore there is a reduction, or we may have change in the way they have benefits for their positions. We also do see an increase in the elementary extracurricular of $3,053.27, modest increase, of course, and related to the same. So let's go ahead and look at our budget sheet. And I will increase this for you all. I just want to walk you through some of these aspects so that you are aware of the changes. Stipends are paid for co-curricular activities. So oftentimes there are stipends for clubs or certain activities that you're familiar with, such as music. We have amazing stability in these programs. So typically our stipend amounts stay quite steady with slight increases. And we do have some movement in these positions. So we have some newer people coming on board. That is why you do see either a relative flat line or a slight decrease there. In elementary co-curricular, we do have a situation where we have increases to stipends for athletics, and that is what accounts for the increase of the $3,000. I want to talk about summer school for a moment because I want to be very clear that the summer school amount proposed in this article is a stable one that we have always had in the budget for situations where there might be a student, especially at Hampton Academy, that might need some type of credit recovery. But the lion's share of summer school money is federal money and is not represented in this budget. And this year we are assessing closely not only what we would typically put towards summer school through federal funds, but an increase to that effort for learning loss mitigation. And several of our federal funding sources, we have ESSER grants, and we also have an America Recovery Grant that does require that we use a percentage toward learning loss. So Mary Giard is working very hard right now to address those needs. Mary, anything you'd like to say about those federal funded summer school efforts?
Just that we're fortunate to have extra money this year so that we can support more students and offer more programming. We will be able to have that available in both the Winterport area as well as the Hampden area. So we'll be able to serve students from all communities who participate.
And I'm glad you called that one out because I was concerned with the number, but I couldn't imagine it represented what we typically do for that very reason. Without getting into too much detail, what's sort of an order of magnitude change this year due to COVID? Do you anticipate have parents or student, has it already been kind of laid out? Are people still requesting? What is it shaping up to look like?
I'll let Mary speak to specifics, but we're just in the hiring phase right now of getting our staff situated to actually present the plan. And then Mary will be speaking with the principals how we organize the students that qualify, and also for those whose parents may inquire about the program. But we really hope to be actively reaching out so that the students are identified appropriately. Mary?
So to date, I've done a survey of staff folks who might be interested in helping to teach summer school. We're calling it summer camp for the most part. And I've sent out some letters to people who have expressed interest. We've set up a time, both Lynn Wells, who runs the extended school year for special education students, and I have been working closely so that we align time-wise. We are factoring in transportation for any child who does participate. And we have also done some broad brush thinking about numbers of kids that might need help. What I'm finding is happening all across the state, and we may end up having that same issue, is that there aren't enough people to teach the students who need the support. So that's why we came early out of the gate to ask about our own employees here in RSU 22 who would be interested in participating. And then we'll do what we can beyond that by being able to see if we can get some more participation from other folks in the area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another aspect to this article is graduation for the high school. And certainly we are going through plans for graduation, and we will be getting more information out once we have a better sense of our survey results from students and families about graduation preferences. I will say the $4,750 has been a solid amount that has served us, but we also recognize with a change in graduation plans due to COVID, we may have different funding needs, and we would turn to our ESSER grant if we do have that issue, if this funding amount doesn't prove to be adequate.
So that hadn't occurred to me. I mean, everyone thinks of graduation as sort of a separate event, but it is actually part of funded curriculum, correct? Or is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Do you know what we paid last year for the graduation that we presented? Do
Right.
you know what for last year?
I can give you the,
Were we within, I don't need specifics, but were we within the 4,700?
yes, we were within that. We did use some additional funds. We did not necessarily go over the $4,000. We just could use funding to have special amenities for the students, but
we were within budget anyway.
Very much so.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And then I'd also like to add that over the years, we've contracted with Northern Light for the trainer position at the high school. And remember, we added in the trainer for the middle schools, and this budget continues to access that contract service. And we do have that increased a bit because of anticipated contract increasing. So I'm happy to take any questions from the audience.
I have a question.
You can go ahead.
Again.
Okay. So you have talked about some of the impact of COVID, but I'm curious, and I'll be asking this question throughout. Does this budget reflect lessons learned from our COVID experience, in particular in relationship to the extracurricular and co-curricular parts of this budget?
So I would say to you that the way COVID impacted our clubs and our athletics was to shut them down, basically. And so we had limited offerings. What we've learned through COVID is that there is a way to still facilitate those activities. You just have to do it with a special circumstance in mind. So the COVID funding that we've received has helped us to get, for instance, music propped right back up. It's not exactly what the music teachers would say we hope for in the future, but it certainly is a way to get the students singing and performing again. So this budget does not take that into account because the COVID federal funding was turned to make those changes and shifts. For instance, plexiglass and being able to have masks for singing. I will say that in the year prior though, Marianne, we had really looked at the budget from an equity lens around things like transportation, making sure supplies and materials were accessible to both schools and the middle school lens, and we have continued that through with this budget.
Thank you.
I did have a question as well, Regan. And I'm sure that this has probably already been gone over, but you had referenced that Mary Gerard is working on, the percent of relief funds that has to go to the loss mitigation. can we have a breakdown of what we received, what's been used, where everything has been allocated, and kind of what we're projecting the future use of that relief money is for?
Sure. That happens monthly at our finance committee meetings, and so we can get a report out at our next board meeting to the whole board so they can see those breakdowns.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I don't
Okay.
see any. Great, thank you.
So with that, we'll close out Article 4. Right, and we can get ready to move right on to Article 5, if that's the will of the group. One moment, please. And can you all see that adequately, or do you need that enlarged?
That looks good.
Okay. Article 5 is student staff support. It is the cost for a variety of services that I reviewed earlier today. And you will see that our proposal that we're coming to you tonight with is $2,934,948.10. And that is an increase of $191,661.36. And it is a 6.99% increase. We should talk today about where the increase comes from. And I want to be very direct with you that we're here tonight to say that COVID has had a significant impact on our need for technology, both new, improved, and revised so that it actually is meeting our needs if we already have it present in our buildings. So we're going to go through a substantial discussion around that this evening. But in addition, you'll see that we do have variances for guidance. We do have a reduction in health services. Instructional related technology, you'll see the increase there. 504 is staying relatively flat. We have other student support coming in at $5,460, relatively flat funding of intervention, improvement of instruction, and then we have staff training, professional development, along with library services and assessment. If we scroll down on this, you'll see some explanations for exactly where these variances come. So in guidance, we have an increase in projected salary, of course, for our employees. We have national board stipends that are paid at a rate of $4,000 for each national board certified guidance counselor and teacher, which is included in this article. And we have a decrease in benefits due to a new hire. In health services, we did see a decrease across our lines. We had a new hire who replaced a very much veteran nurse, and that was our largest decrease. And we have a new approach to budgeting across the nursing needs. So we are applying to certain schools what their exact costs are. So that is an adjustment as well. I do want to say about health services that COVID funding has also been applied in this area. We did recognize that we needed to have increased services across our schools, and we made sure that we did allot funding for that. We also have made use of PPE purchases through COVID funding, so I think we're well stocked in those areas. But Barb Perrin is here tonight from nursing to speak with us about that. So at this time, Barb, is there anything you'd like to share?
No, I think we just tried really hard to be fiscally conservative with this budget, and we do have a lot of PPE that we think we will have left over for next year so that we have fewer supplies that we need to buy.
Didn't we hire like some temporary nurses to help? They're not in here. You're going to continue that if we need to next year through
COVID funding.
COVID funding?
Yes.
Okay.
So we did have nurses who came in at various positions for various amounts of time.
Right.
And so we'll only continue that as needed. But if we do, we'll make sure we have COVID funds to do that.
Thank you.
Do we have a nurse at each building, correct?
We
Right
do
now,
not.
But not normally.
Well, a nurse at each building right now is true. In Winterport, we have a nurse shared between Smith and Wagner typically. Is that accurate, Barb?
So yes, we have one full-time nurse for the 2 Winterport schools. We have a part-time nurse at McGraw, a part-time nurse at Weatherby, and a part-time nurse at Reedsbrook.
Normally.
Normally. So this year we put extra nursing services in Winterport to cover the schools there.
So the nursing setup we have right now, because of COVID, will continue until we're back to normal. Is that correct?
Correct. We'll continue to assess. So we have an operations committee and our nurses, Barb serves on that along with Brittany Lehman. Continue to talk about what we need for adequate service along the way.
And the federal funds are good until another whole year, but correct, right?
Correct. Our CRF 1 and 2, we have expended. We're still invoicing for those.
Okay.
So we do have ESSER 2 that we can turn to, as well as the American Recovery Program.
And I know this is outside of just the nursing discussion, but are we expecting, with the package that just went through the federal level, we're expecting more CR funds too, correct?
That is the American Recovery
Okay.
Package, and they have just recently communicated with us about that.
Mary Ann, you have a question?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Pretty much the same question, but really focusing on some of the student effects from this disjointed year, the anxiety, the sense of loss in terms of learning at, probably more at the upper levels than the lower levels. But I just want to ask that same question. Does this this budget, this amount of money, is it based on lessons we have learned as we've watched children go through this? And is it adequate to meet the needs of the students as they come back?
Well, certainly we recognize that guidance will be critical, as will the nursing services you propose around anxiety. We also recognize that social work is substantial in that regard, and that is in a different article. You will see that in articles 1 and 2 when we present on the 14th. As far as our intervention, we are fortunate that we have the federal funds that we are going to be able to turn to for intervention services with the learning loss. So that's where we will be focusing our spending in that regard. And then we also would say that technology has been a heavy lift for us in our issue 22, because we know that it does help with learning loss, with having equity across experience for students. So in this article today, you'll be seeing expenditure there as well.
So these are all great questions. In fact, the previous as well, my guess is we're going to have similar thoughts related to the sort of the anticipation that this isn't enough to address COVID or post-COVID. However, the CARES Act and the other sources of funding have really gone over and above to do more than just supplement, but to take care of that. I'm wondering if when we put the link 22 out with these, Reagan, that we have I'm sure we will, have a paragraph that describes that, some of these categories, you may not see a shift for what you would normally think are COVID-related expenses, but bear in mind that maybe we can just summarize what was provided for that funding. Maybe keep it as a separate article so they don't confuse it with what we're looking for budget approval, because it's not seeking budget approval. It's being provided to us whether we vote on it or not. But one I had a question on, though, is instruction-related technology. Is that stemming back to we were able to get the technology, but not the sort of help to operate it? Is that correct?
So a substantial cost in the $160,000 increase is having network improvement. So network improvement related to COVID would be something we could move for federal funds. And we are looking at a project right now at our elementary schools, because the new technology that's been introduced there will probably require that we have additional bandwidth and an effective network. So that may be something that we turn to using COVID. But the network improvements that you're seeing here in this budget are related to general needs. So I'm going to let Nate talk about the MILT Decisions main laptop initiative regarding network support, and also our needs here at the high school. We did work on our network last year, but we recognize we need further improvement. So I'll turn it over to him.
Evening, folks. So this winter season, we put in through an E-rate consultant to bid out to have the networks upgraded at our Wagner School, Reedsbrook Middle School, and Hamden Academy. The E-rate process is the way to apply for federal funds and get them to help you with this huge cost that districts incur from upgrading networks. MLTI announced a couple months ago that they were no longer going to be supporting middle school networks. So they handled all the switches, they managed the access points, and the connectivity coming to the building. I do believe they'll still continue to manage the connectivity coming to the building, but all the other equipment is up to us to support. And they told us that the end of that support period is coming up. It will most likely be towards the end of next year. And it was recommended that we look at upgrading these networks so we don't have a lapse in support from when it ends and when the new network gets put in.
That's great.
Yep, and so the high school at the same time, we're looking for a more robust, rigorous system that can support all the bandwidth draw we've been putting on it with all these virtual meetings and things like that, so that it can handle it without interruptions during the normal class day.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Nate,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I have a few questions. Just real quick for Nate, just because you just spoke, but were we on a contract for that? Is that what's happening? Like that contract is coming to an end for us? Or are they breaching that contract and just no longer providing that support that we were using them for?
So their MLTI has been heavily involved with the state for years. Since I've gotten out of high school 20 years ago. And so it has its cycles. It usually refreshes devices every 4 to 5 years. Last year was supposed to be one of those recycle periods, but they ended up getting a new governor in who wanted to become more familiar with the system, and so decided not to recycle at that point. And they initiated what they call a bridge year. So we're in that bridge year now. This summer, our middle schools, as well as networks, are planning on receiving all new devices, 7th and 8th grade, including staff too. That is currently put out to bid by the state, and they're waiting to see what comes back of that. But to answer your question, it's not really a contract. it expired or it ended last year, and they created this bridge year thing to kind of cover it. And they've given us ample time or heads up that the networks will no longer be supported by the Maine State Library or the MLTI program.
So, and I'm not very tech savvy, so I apologize, but this means that we are going to, or you are going to manage that network, or are we looking to hire somebody else for that support?
Well,
Like
that's
vendor.
an additional burden on my staff, and that's one of the reasons why I'm asking for more. But
Right.
through the E-rate process, we did apply for what they call managed internal broadband. So with the design of the new networks, we're going to have a network company come in, set it up for us, and help us get it started, turnkey, so that 5 to 6 months later, we've worked out all the things, and then they're going to pass it on to us so that we can indeed support.
And you feel confident to be able to sustain that in-house?
Yep. Because MLTI has been only covering our middle school networks. We've been covering our elementary schools. We've been covering our high school. It's been more work for us, but we have been managing it in the past. So I feel confident with the right system in place and their support for that first 5 to 6 months that we will be able to manage it.
Okay, great.
Is the addition of a second technician a full-time position, I assume? And that's another you?
No, it would not be another director, no.
Oh, would not be another director.
It'd be tech support.
Presently, you have,
Just one full-time,
okay,
and then another person who works part-time.
and so you would maintain one, you now go to 2 full-time and 1 half-time.
No, I think the plan is to go to 2 full-time. We kind of dodged that part-time one into 1 full-time.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Yep.
And we have used Corona relief funds to get some additional hours to the tech department because of integrating all of the new devices that we've purchased through federal funds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Reagan, just to follow up on that comment, I know last year, prior to learning that the deadline for expenditures was extended past December, I know we talked about the difficulty in using money for that kind of a position, but not having it go through the whole year. So did we end up doing that?
Yes, we ended up extending the hours for that position.
Great.
Into the spring. Anything you want to speak about with that, Nate?
No, it's been a huge help. We've had devices coming in and we're unboxing and setting up, and as well as managing all the new devices that have come in at the beginning of the school year. So that was one of the things I kept asking and kept hounding, and thankfully have received. So yes, until the end of the school, that support has been put in by the CARES Act.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
I did have a couple more questions. This is kind of back on, I think you had stated, Regan, that the COVID funding had sort of we'd ran through it basically. Like, it sounds like there's an allotment we were able to use. Is that correct? So there must be, and this is to kind of Rob's point, but I'm just thinking that from conversations I had with some parents this weekend, this would be, I think it would be really beneficial, like Rob said, to have this pointed so that we can try and inform the public as best as possible what did come in and where those funds were allocated, but also if there is, there's these percentage breakdowns of what we're allowed to use within certain categories. Because then there could be question of like, well, why is that cost of that going up so much? But you've got 2 external, variables happening here. So I think that would be very beneficial, even just for myself, but I'm sure from a public perspective that they're not reading or looking at this as often, it'll be very informative for them to have a better understanding.
Okay, that is certainly no problem. And am I still presenting? Because I've
You
just lost it.
disappeared.
Okay,
Speaking of, Nate, you need to provide technical support to Regan.
no, I pulled out on purpose because I was going to just show something to you all. So one moment, please.
And Jessica, I know there were some art, in Link 22, we did discuss this before, but there was a different, perhaps an audience when it was announced that were receiving the benefit versus now prior to budget, we have fiscal hawks that are going to wonder what happened. So we need to refresh memories and share any updates on that as well, because it's it's the same audience, but a lot of time has passed, and quite frankly, a lot of people are probably
Yep. Well, and yeah, I also think like with everything, the loss that folks have felt, students have felt through this last year, budget is going to be critical for the coming year. And I think it's going to be very critical that the public understands really where that's all coming from, in particular here more than ever, probably, so that they know like it's, we've allocated it appropriately and we've been as vigilant as we can be and conservative as we can be with how those funds are spent.
So to Jessica's point, I just want to show an example of something, and I think it's what you're getting at, Jessica, about what would be helpful for people to understand. So I'm going to show you, this is literally the budget document that we use for one of our Corona relief funds. And I'm sure it's a challenge to see it all, so I'll get it a little larger for you, okay? And you can see that we have required categories. So we have additional buses and vans. We did buy equipment to make sure we had the van services at the beginning of the year, because we had to transport our students to outside placements, yet we couldn't put multiple students in a van, if you all recall those times of social distancing extremes. Category B, we have facilities rentals, and we have to meet CDC guidelines in all that we are asking for. So we purchased storage trailers to remove all the items out of classrooms that needed to be held, and you'll see those down by the turf. We have a slab for a walk-in freezer because we had to be able to move all of our food for all of those remote meals that we were doing, and making sure that we were providing enough adequate ordering time to have the food here and ready. We have desk purchases that we've made for the return of increased instruction. So you have all the materials and supplies for plexiglass, PPE, cleaning, masks, gowns. And all of these amounts are kept track of down to the decimal point and have to be invoiced in a multi-step process that our accountant, Trish, who prepared all of our documents for today, thank you, Trish, along with doing this on a daily basis, you can see that the expenditures are well laid out, and I think that us publicizing this would be helpful to show people exactly where it's gone.
This is great. This is this is so it's incredibly clear, very detailed. This is fantastic. This would be wonderful for everyone to see.
So this is just Corona Relief Fund number 1. And you can see it was $1.8 million. We have fully, all the expenditures are in order. We haven't invoiced for everything because we have to wait to receive some of the items, of course, but most everything is back. Technology related costs that we're talking about right now, $836,000 of Corona relief spent on technology. So
where did the bipolar ionization end up? That was another round of funding, correct?
So that was in Corona Relief Fund number 2. And I have that here in hard copy. I don't have the application to pull up this quickly for you, but same thing, right
Yeah.
down to the letter. And we have
Yeah.
additional technology in that as well
Got it.
for iPad purchases.
This is great to see.
Yeah, this is, we've talked about it, but until you see the number, the impact of it doesn't really set in.
That's correct.
What is the,
Thank
again,
you.
just because it's in front of it, the flipped classroom 90-day subscription? I thought it was a concept. I didn't realize that it also had supporting subscriptions.
Well, what the subscription means is that we had to subscribe to modules that every teacher accessed through a
Okay.
remote. So we had assignments every week that were due, and then we all came together on Thursday evenings for a class. So we all had to subscribe individually in order to access those trainings.
Got it. You could write a whole link 22 just on the details of what's on this page.
Correct. Correct. Well, I hope that helps you all to see.
Oh, absolutely. Perfect.
Yes, thank you. Very helpful.
Good. Okay, so back to Article 5. Okay, as we move through the additional categories, I guess what's really important to hear here once again is the notion of federal funding and the grant where the student support, intervention, and professional development is most heavily supported in federal funds is ESSER 2, ESSER 1, and also just typical federal funds that Mary Giard does facilitate, the title grants. And we've talked about those in past budget sessions. So although our budget is showing limited amounts of increase in these areas, the support is coming through the federal monies. Mary, anything you'd like to share on those topics?
It just seemed very prudent given our budget circumstances and the other opportunities we have. As Regan mentioned, we have ESSER 1 and 2, and that will have some impact on what we're doing with students. But also, we have a federal program called Title 2A, and that's for professional development for staff in RSU 22. And so many of the things people have wanted to do this year, we have funded through that funding line rather than dipping into local.
Interesting.
So I have a question. The COVID funds, this budget is of course built for the whole year. The COVID funds, is there any prediction about when they may end? Do you expect them to continue to flow through this whole upcoming academic year?
Yes, we do. The funds are CRF 1 and 2, and I just showed you an example of CRF 1. They conclude on June 30th. So we have almost fully expended those funds for services, equipment, and purchases that you saw there. But ESSER 1 and 2 and the America Recoveries Act are extending through 2022 or 2023. So we have a substantial time for which to utilize those funds.
Seems like homework must be over.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about improvement of instruction right here. We do have instructional coaches in RSU 22, and we continue to consider how instructional coaching can benefit, certainly improving our staff experience to have support as they need it, have it customized to their needs, but also focus on the priorities that we've had. Math has been a focus in RSU 22, the achievement scores there. We now are turning our attention to literacy just as heavily because we recognize there has been learning impact because of the COVID times. So we will be assessing coaching right along with everything else to make sure it is being turned to being attentive to what teachers need out in the field to best support their students. We also recognize staff training is that same significant need, and the federal funds have been hugely helpful to us in providing adequate professional development. But I also would like to share with you that many of the professional development requests we're getting now are for virtual trainings because so many entities have turned to that platform, and they're cheaper. We've been getting professional development of the highest quality, sometimes completely free because there are grant opportunities out there to fund those things. But also the priorities right now around student anxiety, making sure that we are recognizing trauma-informed instruction. Those are plentiful, and we're being able to access them from across the country. And our people, employees are doing a wonderful job accessing those. So we're able to give a full menu to our staff. Library services, we see a modest increase there related primarily to salaries and benefits. And then assessment. I'd like to bring the news to you that NWEA has been selected as the state assessment moving forward. We have had NWEA assessment in our budget for years. So the state has asked us a preference, and we have asked that moving forward, that assessment costs be borne by the state for NWEA. And so we will see in our budget for next year that we have a reduction in what is in demand. So we're going to look at what other products may be out there that are important for us to utilize if there is anything that's complementary to NWEA in the assessment category.
Do we know if the state is going to pay? Right now we give NWEA 3 times a year in fall, winter, and spring. Is the state's goal to do the 3 times, or are they going to pay the 1 time and that's it?
Mary, can you answer that question?
So I actually talked to our rep yesterday from NWEA just to get some clarification, and things will look the same to us as they normally do. So we will be able to administer at mid-year like we have in the past. What the state will require is what happens in the fall and the spring. And there will be an additional subtest called language usage that will be covered for our students in grades 3 through 8 and then 11. So for our children for reading, math, and language usage for K through 2, 9, and potentially 10 if we want, we would be paying that out of district funds.
Thanks.
Any final questions around Article 5? Okay, we'll dive into adult education. So adult education is a partnership in RSU 22, as I shared earlier. This budget is for RSU 22 share. of our adult education programming. We are coming to you today with a flat funded budget from last year at $75,080. And we do feel that coming to you with this level of a budget is adequate to provide our educational and recreational opportunities to the district. And we do cooperate with RSU 26 and 34. Tonight,
Oh, I'm sorry.
okay, we have Rebecca Cross with us, and Rebecca Cross is the director of the Riverside Adult Educational Partnership. I'm going to walk us through our subcategories, and we'll start with the questions. But before I go any further, Rebecca, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to say hello and let people see who you are and make any comment before I dive in.
Thank you so much, Regan, and hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Cross, and I appreciate being included in this meeting. I'm happy to take any questions that you have about our adult education partnership. We've had a really busy year, and our tiny RSU 22 staff has been able to come together and take on different and new responsibilities. I'm really grateful for the RSU 22 staff members that we have, because they're so invested and willing to pivot. That's our word now, right? And do what needs doing. And I'm happy to tell you that we have 11 students on our academic roster right now, which is actually one more student than we had last year. We have 5 students who will probably graduate this spring. We have also 5 completions already through our partnership with the Penobscot County Jail, and all manner of other good things happening in adult education right now that I'd love to talk to you about, but I'll wait for your questions. And again, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So I can't say enough about Rebecca's work with our program. Her enthusiasm alone attracts so many people to participate, but we have really tried to get our arms around students and young adults who are really moving in a direction of being interested in their high school. Is a replacement of the prior GED. So we are actively that way, but also trying to help students get their diplomas. So that effort you see there is our adult education primary programming. So there are salaries for our director, of course. We pay through RSU 26. So actually the salary is listed as a contracted service. But we do have clerical assistants who's housed at Hamden Academy, who helps with all of our paperwork, registrations, and some student contact time. And then we have supplies, printing, all of that you see coming probably to your own homes for adult education. And then the assessment side. So we do test in adult education because you need to know the readiness of students to participate in certain programming, and that is a substantial side of the cost of adult ed. And then we have the second side, which is the enrichment side. So all of the classes that you see advertised for adults to be taking, that is organized and coordinated through our enrichment aspect. So we'll just open it up for questions, and I'll let Rebecca go ahead and speak with you about information.
Rebecca, have you seen, I know you had mentioned there's one more student this year than there was last year. Do you sort of know in advance the interest that folks have before the new year is beginning? And are they starting at any time they wish? I'm just curious, with everything that's happened this last year, I would like to think that perhaps a lot of folks have considered adult education more so than they would have in the past, and how important that education is for them. So I'm just curious how COVID may have sort of helped in that respect.
Yes, I think that we have experienced a boom. I want to say that I'd have to go back and do a an email dig, but I wrote to the super team. That's my 3 superintendents that I report to. Wrote to them and said, wow, business is good. We have 68 students on the academic roster right now. And then honestly, not maybe a month later, we had 80. So it's not always just for high school completions though. The numbers that I shared with you about completers or potential graduates for this year are related to the high set or a diploma, but also we have people pursuing workforce training or employability skills or career advising. People are taking some time, using this time and have used this time to think about what they might want to do instead or to take time to invest in themselves. I do think that also the guidance counselors are doing a great job referring students to adult education. So I've actually never met Jill Kenny, but we correspond frequently about students who might need support.
Thank you.
How have you had the the COVID impact for some of the, I guess I wouldn't say non-traditional, but in the past you've had beekeeping, hunter safety, hands-on. Are those coming back? Are they actually being sought after? Was there a period where we had to kind of put them off or cancel or?
Oh, definitely. So last year around this time, well, at the end of the year, last year, we had served over 500 community members in these types of classes that you're talking about, enrichment classes. And this year, I'm actually really proud to say that 139 community members have partaken in some classes. So that's amazing, but you can see the hit for sure. And there's been pretty wide range of responses to that. People feel really angry, people feel disappointed, and also really grateful for that which has been able to run. We've had some good Zoom cooking classes that people are enjoying, but we certainly are excited to get back full swing because it's so important to the community, I think, even now more than ever, to feel connected in a real shared experience. So I'm expecting big business next year with all kinds of enthusiastic participation.
Great, that's wonderful. I know there was talk, I don't know which or how it was going to roll out, but even just for an outdoor, easy to socially distance ATV safety, which is required for middle schoolers age to be able to participate in that activity prior to the age of, I think it's 15, where if they do take a safety class, they're able to basically do that activity. And I think it's only if it's offered through, I don't know if it's state of Maine or through an accredited program. So I didn't know if that's something that would be maybe run through the enrichment, but where it's for more of a middle school age, I don't know if that falls under this umbrella or not, but nice to find a home for it somewhere.
Right. Usually we don't offer enrichment classes to folks under 18, but I wouldn't mind looking into it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
People, I used to feel differently, but I used to think that we should open it to younger students, but people really, the feedback is they appreciate having some adult learning time.
Yeah, yeah.
But we do have some like parent and me classes or family cooking classes that are really fun to participate. I've actually done them with my daughter. They're really fun.
That's an interesting way to do it. Yeah.
So I think Faye had a question.
Yeah, as I look at what we spent to date of 28,000, a little bit more, I know that's due because we haven't been able to offer a lot of the programs. So my question is not so much for her, but rather for us, is that now our carryover? Does that go into the surplus, go into our carryover? Or are we contracted for a certain amount with them and therefore we would pay that amount? Does that make sense?
Yes.
We get billed or no. at the end of the school year for Rebecca's costs and for some program costs and whatever.
So that
So
doesn't
it'll-
show yet.
Very late in June, maybe early July before we get those invoices. So that will boost up those expenses for the year.
Okay, so it's not that we haven't spent that amount, it's that we have spent some, it just doesn't show it. this way.
Right, we just haven't been billed fully for it yet.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else for adult ed? Okay, well, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Yes.
Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it, and I know our students do as well.
Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting tonight, unless there is another agenda item. Okay, well, I
Seeing
heard you
none.
loud and clear on the corona relief. We will find ways to make sure we're advertising how this has been used and help people to understand how closely this money is tracked and categorized by required state mandates. And we'll get that information out. The next meeting, April 14th, Articles 1 and 2, which are significant articles in our budget, that is regular instruction and special education instruction. So we'll look forward to that.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Reagan. Motion to adjourn. I saw Jane.
So moved.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna say so moved.
All right. Jane and Jessica. All right. Thank you all.
Thank you all.